Ayanokoji is currently preparing for his date with Sato when he begins to contemplate whether or not he's even capable of feeling love. Going back 2 days prior, we find Karuizawa waking up, feeling as though the weight of her past has been lifted from her shoulders. Though for some odd reason, she can't seem to stop thinking about the boy that's been manipulating her. Ayanokoji's just so smart, strong, and handsome, which is why Karuizawa has fallen in love with him. She attempts to talk herself out of it, only to be interrupted by a text message. Then it's while getting dressed that she becomes embarrassed, upon remembering the time that Ayanokoji touched her thighs. She heads to the cafe and sits down next to Sato, who apparently has a date with Ayanokoji. This prompts Karuizawa to bring up all the other guys that she could have possibly chose from. However, Sato only wants Ayanokoji, and she asks Karuizawa for advice on making this Christmas date absolutely perfect. Now you need to remember that Karuizawa is in a fake relationship with Harada, but to everyone else, they seem to be the perfect couple. So she puts on her fake persona and asks Sato why she fell in love with Ayanokoji, but deep down, she really just wishes that Sato liked literally anyone else. Then on their way back to the dorms, Sato brings up the idea of turning this into a double date. However, she wants this double date to seem like a total coincidence. Now alone in her bedroom, Karuizawa begins to wonder why Ayanokoji agreed to this date. I mean, is he genuinely interested in Sato, or could he be looking to replace Karuizawa? Either way, her anxiety gets the best of her and she reaches for her cell. Though just as she picks it up, it begins ringing. Upon answering, Ayanokoji asks her to gather some information on Sato before quickly hanging up. Karuizawa is more than willing to help out, but is very annoyed that he didn't even ask if she's feeling sick after the incident with Ryun. Jumping back in time to that same morning, we find Ayanokoji at the mall buying a couple of items. He then bumps into Sakayanagi, who asks if he had a hand in Class C's downfall. She then states that she wants to face off against Ayanokoji. However, he declines and tells her to target Class B, all the while inferring that Sakayanagi isn't strong enough to take down Ichino's. This successfully riles her up as she proclaims that she is a genius and as such will crush Ayanokoji. Kamuro then arrives, explaining that Ichino's is a one-of-a-kind, good-hearted person, which causes Sakayanagi to exclaim that Ichino's has the exact same weakness as Kamuro. Ayanokoji then steps away and spots two of his classmates, which essentially ruins all of his plans for the day. With nothing else to do, he decides to see a movie, and as fate would have it, Ibuki purchased the seat directly next to him. About halfway through the movie, the theater lights come on due to a projector malfunction, and Ibuki turns to him stating that she will never forgive him. She asks if he really plans to stay hidden in the background, and he says yes, as long as you keep your mouth shut. Eventually, the movie winds up being cancelled, and they leave the theater going their separate ways when Ibuki suddenly drags him into a hiding spot. Only a second later, Ishizaki and two Class C boys walk by, discussing how Ryun lost a fistfight to Albert, Ishizaki, and Ibuki, though that is of course just the cover story. Ibuki then demands a rematch, and Ayanokoji attempts to dissuade her but ends up giving in after noticing her resolve. They sneak into a storage room so that nobody can see them, and immediately realize the door is locked. Ibuki isn't fazed by this and states the fight will end when someone falls unconscious, and Ayanokoji agrees as long as Ibuki promises to never challenge him like this again. She explodes forward, showering him with kicks as he chooses to go on the defensive. He doesn't want to leave evidence of this fight, so he strikes her temple, stunning her for just a moment. Ibuki retaliates with a full power kick, but is picked up by her throat, leaving her with no choice but to tap out. He then calls the store, asking specifically for the employee that they saw leaving this room. Said employee comes to their rescue and lets them off the hook, because he'd be in trouble as well if his company found out. Then just before leaving, Ibuki randomly asks if it's possible to accumulate 800 million personal points, to which Ayanokoji declares, impossible. Now on his way out of the mall, Ayanokoji spots Shinohara being berated by an upperclassman. He's unsure of who's in the wrong, but it doesn't matter since Ike comes to the rescue. Just after this incident, Ayanokoji receives a phone call from Hasebe inviting him to a Christmas party. He has to decline, explaining that he has a date that day, and Hasebe promises to keep Sakura away from him on Christmas. Hold up. Some of you have asked me why I substitute in different models for characters such as Hasebe and Miyaki. Well, first reason is that I need full body images from head to toe, which can be difficult to find. Then if I do find one, it has to be the right size and quality so that I can stretch or shrink it accordingly without the image becoming too blurry. Not to mention, the angle the character is drawn at can also be an issue. So yeah, be sure to subscribe if you enjoy this series. The next day, Ayanokoji wakes up early to head to an agreed-upon meeting location. A complaining Ryun arrives, stating that he won't allow himself to be used. Ayanokoji informs him that Class A will be attacking Class B, and that he would like some help with having Kushida expelled. Ryun refuses, and they begin to discuss the possibility of acquiring 800 million personal points. After this conversation, Ryun agrees to talk to the new leaders of Class C in exchange for Ayanokoji giving him exactly what he wants after Class D becomes Class A. Manabu then arrives, and Ryun begins bickering with him and even attempts to strike his senior, but he impacts nothing but air. Manabu then explains that the student council plays a part in creating the special exams, and in turn can make them significantly more dangerous. Apparently, 17 students have already been expelled since Nagumo was elected, and it's highly likely that Nagumo was behind them. You see, Manabu believes that the student council should strive to help each and every student, however Ryun and Ayanokoji don't fully agree. Ryun takes his leave, and Manabu hands over a packet of information on the student council. He also asks to introduce Ayanokoji to the only second year that stands against Nagumo. Ayanokoji agrees, and Manabu tells him to use everything at his disposal, including the useless little sister that's never done anything but chase after him. A little while later, Ayanokoji texts Horikita before heading to a cafe to speak with her directly. On his way there, he overhears that Horikita rejected Sudo and that Ike is going on a date with Shinohara. Eventually, he arrives at the cafe to surprisingly find Horikita having lunch with Kushida. Ayanokoji really doesn't want Kushida to overhear this conversation, but Horikita forces him to talk. He tells her that Manabu wishes for his little sister to join the student council, however she doesn't believe him. So with the help of Kushida's social network, they acquire Manabu's number and Horikita gives him a call. Manabu immediately realizes the situation and goes along with Ayanokoji's story. But even so, Horikita refuses to join the student council. Ayanokoji doesn't wish to press any further while Kushida is within earshot, so he heads back to the dorm to find an unexpected visitor. It turns out that Hasebe told Sakura that Ayanokoji is busy this Christmas, so she stopped by a day early to give him his present. He opens the gift to find a pair of plain but warm-looking winter gloves, and he's actually extremely grateful because he's never owned a pair of gloves before. It's now Christmas morning, so a very nervous Ayanokoji heads out 10 minutes early to meet up with Sato for their date. She arrives only a moment later as Ayanokoji notices a Christmas present in her bag. Then unexpectedly, Karuizawa arrives with Harada, and after a bit of conversation, she offers up the idea of a double date. Ayanokoji reluctantly agrees before finding out that all four of them have tickets to the same movie. On their way to the theater, Karuizawa tries her best to play matchmaker, as she hounds them with multiple questions. She even insults Ayanokoji multiple times, giving Sato a reason to compliment him. Though it's during this interaction that Ayanokoji begins to suspect that this double date was no mere coincidence. Upon arriving at the movies, our group is confronted by Student Council President Nagumo. He blatantly asks Ayanokoji why Manabu is so interested in him. Ayanokoji does his best to brush off the question, but Nagumo physically grabs hold of him. Ayanokoji then asks what Nagumo plans to do as the new president, and finds out that Nagumo just wants to create some interesting exams. Mr. President then leaves, and the girls step away, leaving the two guys alone. And Ayanokoji asks for information on Nagumo. Harada states that Nagumo always achieves his goal, even if it means cutting people loose in the process. The girls return and they watch the movie before heading out to lunch. Karuizawa continues to lay the pressure on Ayanokoji, but even through all this, he's still having a good time, though he doesn't wish to do it again. Later on, the couple split up and Ayanokoji notices that someone seems to be stalking him. He truthfully tells Sato that he enjoyed the date. However, she doesn't believe him, stating that he didn't smile a single time. He tries to reassure her as she pulls out the Christmas present, asking if Ayanokoji will be her boyfriend. He immediately turns her down, explaining that he doesn't love her and that in fact, he's never felt that way about anyone. They do agree to hang out again sometime before Sato runs away brokenhearted. Then upon watching her leave, Ayanokoji contemplates whether or not he just made a mistake, and thinks about how he might have accepted her feelings if he wasn't caught up in so much drama. His phone then begins to ring, and he answers it to find a stranger asking to meet up with him in regards to Nagamo. Ayanokoji agrees, then orders the stalker to reveal themselves. Karuizawa steps out of hiding, curious as to why he rejected Sato. He tells her that he simply doesn't love Sato. However, he does think it would have been fun to experience a woman's touch. She pries further into his reasoning, pushing him to reveal that he actually rejected Sato so that he could keep Karuizawa close by. She exclaims that he's only able to see people as tools, and he confesses that he's never once experienced love. Karuizawa then switches gears, stating that "I thought you were done with me," as he admits to going back on his word. Next, they discuss the situation surrounding Nagamo before heading to meet this mysterious contact. After waiting roughly half an hour, the contact reveals himself to be Kiriyama, the student council vice president. He asks about the blonde girl, which Ayanokoji explains to be his partner. Kiriyama reveals that the third semester will have a special exam that forces all 3 grade levels to mingle together. Then they each discuss their motives for taking down Nagamo, and they're both aware that Nagamo isn't afraid to have people expelled. The vice president then leaves by saying that he will do his best to feed Ayanokoji as much information as he can about the student council. Karuizawa then teases Ayanokoji about their partnership, before saying that she will do whatever she can to protect him from Nagamo. She also brings up that Ayanokoji sort of acts like a manga character that was raised in a hidden facility since birth to be a secret agent. She then laughs about how ridiculous that would be, as she hands him a nicely wrapped Christmas present. He gladly accepts it, and she brings up the possibility of ending her fake relationship with Harada. Though Ayanokoji doesn't mind, and the two of them begin using each other's first names. He then takes this opportunity to hand her a bag containing 2 different types of cold medicine. You see, he was planning to give these to her 2 days ago. However, he knew she wasn't sick because he saw her hanging out with Sato. He then asked if she will continue to assist him in the future, before walking away and thinking about how he might eventually fall in love with Kei Karuizawa. Just want to give a big shout out to my newest patron, Daniel Seamer.